Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is a very belated monthly wrap-up for August of 2021. So, August was actually a pretty good reading month for me. Before the school year started back up again, I did have a lot of time to actually dedicate to reading. Also got away for a week, little vacation, which was great. But that time that I actually had to be at home with that part of the summer off allowed me to, throughout the month, read the landmark Herodotus. I did not finish this, however, in August. I finished it in September, so I'm actually going to discuss this one, I think, in a separate video, and I'm going to consider it a September book instead of an August one. The other thing that I was reading in August was Star Trek. It was the first month of Book Trek 2021, where myself and some great co-hosts are exploring Star Trek fiction, iteration by iteration in production order, going from the original series in August all the way up through Enterprise in December. We are not looking at the newest Star Trek this year, but hopefully if we have a Book Trek next year, we'll be looking at those iterations. So since August was the original series, I spent a lot of time reading original series Star Trek. So I'm just going to talk about these very briefly. For Book Trek, I did make individual videos about each one of these, and I will continue to do that for the rest of Book Trek. Hopefully today, maybe I'll be able to make one for TNG. But I'm just going to very briefly talk about these in, I think, the order in which I read them. So the first one that I read was Star Trek, the motion picture novelization by Gene Roddenberry. This came out in 1979, the same year that the actual movie came out, and there's the Great Bird of the Galaxy right there, Gene Roddenberry. And this is a novelization of the movie. It does add some interesting details, however, especially with regard to the Deltan female that was a part of the story. And I like this. And it's also significant because it really sort of begins I would say, the modern era of Trek fiction. Before this, before 1979, Star Trek fiction, which was much more of a Wild West. It does not seem to have been looked over very carefully by those who own the property. So there were certainly some questionable things, sometimes involving people's sexual fantasies, the fantasies of those writers. This kind of begins the more lawyerly, the more reserved part of Trek fiction. And sometimes that can make for something that's dull and boring and unexciting, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So this is important in that way. So as sort of the first official Star Trek book, I started with this. I also read, which relates to that book, The Lost Years by J.M. Dillard. This is the book that fills the gap between the ending of the 5-year mission, excuse me, which we saw 3 years of in the original series, Star Trek, in the 1960s, and the motion picture, which came out again in 1979. We didn't know what the characters went through in between there. So this shows us, between the 5-year mission, the things that happened to our characters to get them to the point in which we see them in Star Trek, the motion picture. And I enjoyed this one, certainly. I thought the character stuff was great. It does take a while for the main plot to kick in, and some of the resolution at the end I was a little bit iffy on. But the character stuff was actually quite good with this. I then read the first original Star Trek novel, at least the first adult one. This is by James Blish. This is Spock Must Die. A thin thing, just a little over really 100 pages. And here we have Spock getting caught in sort of a transporter accident, and he's doubled. You can see 2 Spocks here. And there's issues with this. It's certainly not canon in any way. None of the Trek fictions really is at all. But this certainly is not, even more so than the stuff that's written today. And I enjoyed it overall. Some of Blish's stuff, I didn't think that he had as much confidence as Roddenberry had, that race relations would improve to the point that Roddenberry believed that they could when Star Trek, the original series is going on. But Blish does actually give us some exciting action. The story moves swiftly. And one thing I will say about Blish, too, is he takes the whole idea of this stuff starting, or occurring in space seriously. He thinks about the physics of it, which I really like. So I actually enjoyed Spock Must Die much better than I expected to. I then read Star Trek Invasion. Again, I think this is the order I read it in, but it might have been a little bit different. Invasion First Strike by Diane Carey. And this is book 1 of 4. This is a series that spanned book 1 in the original series, book 2 in TNG, book 3 in DS9, book 4 in Voyager. And because we are following that very order as we go through Book Trek each month, I figured this would be a good series to go through. And this is where we have an ancient alien race which used to control part of the Alpha Quadrant, in which the humans and Vulcans and Klingons are. They come back to reclaim that space. And the first 100 pages or so of this I thought were kind of iffy, a little bit shoddy in some places. But once we meet that alien species, which become known as the Furies, and they resemble our archetypes of demons and like Gorgons and different monsters, diving into their culture, I thought was actually really fascinating. The horror fan in me really enjoyed that. There's certain Wicker Man aspects that we see that I really liked. So I did actually end up really enjoying the second half of this, and was looking forward to reading the second one, the TNG installment. And lastly, for Book Trek, I read Triangle by Sondra, Marshak, and Myrna Culbreath. This was released in the early 80s, although it feels more like one of those mid-70s Star Trek sexual fantasy fan fiction books. The triangle kind of refers to a love triangle between Kirk, Spock, and this mysterious woman. I'm already forgetting her name, Sola Thane, who is just an absolute Mary Sue character. None of the characters are really recognizable in this at all. There's a lot of melodrama, a lot of repetition. There were issues, let's just say that. I did not enjoy this. I did not think this was a good Trek book. And out of all the ones that I just showed, this one will not be going on my shelf. The other ones will, though. So, kind of ended on a downer, but otherwise, the first month of Book Trek was largely a pretty good success. So again, in addition to reading the landmark Herodotus in August, I was also reading these Book Trek books. So it was the motion picture novelization, The Lost Years, Spock Must Die, First Strike, the first in the Invasion series, and Triangle. So yeah, looking forward to fulfilling another good month of reading for September, which September so far is turning out to be a really good reading month. So, all right. Thank you, BookTube.